Hey everybody, for those of you that don't know, my name's Hoopy, and today we are working on this 1980 Ford F150. I got this truck about 1.5 years ago. I've just been having it sit here waiting. I picked it up pretty cheap. Came with 33-inch groundhog tires on it. It's got an old carbureted 306 in it with a 4-speed. The same day I drug it home, whoever had the truck before me, they had gutted the wiring and everything off this. So me and my father-in-law, in about 20 minutes in the driveway, ran a new wire, and I had to go steal a coil off the old Bronco, and I think we cleaned the points up a little bit and dumped a little gas down the carburetor, and we had this thing running in the driveway. And then figured out that the fuel pump was bad, so I got a fuel pump, and then figured out that there's a hole in the gas tank. So I rigged this little 1-gallon can up here to make it run. I got my boat battery in here. We're going to go ahead and dump a little gas in that and hook the battery up here and get this thing to the garage so we can do some work on it. Now, this old girl here is a little cold-natured, but as long as I got the battery connected good enough, she usually cranks and fires. I'm going to go mess with the battery. So, the first thing we're going to be doing before I can even get this thing to the garage is I'm going to go get the torch and I'm going to get a solder on battery end. We're going to clean this up, put this on here, so this thing will have ground and actually crank over, because this thing is worthless. Should be able to just go like this. She's on there. So once this cools down enough that I can touch it, we'll hook it back up. Alright, one more again. She ain't happy, but she's running. Let's get her to the garage. So, I've never really done much with this old truck just because I never really had a plan for it, and I was gathering up some parts here and there and waiting to figure stuff out. So it doesn't run real well because I've never messed with the carburetor. And you can see how they got rid of the smog stuff, what they used to plug that off with. I'd like to see you hook a trailer up under here. Alright, I guess first things first, let's address how crappily this thing runs. Alright, got a carburetor over here on the bench. Just try to delete some of this stuff. I might have to do some research on it and see what all I can and can't get rid of on this carburetor. I believe that the less junk that's on it, the more simple it could be, and that's the way it should be. Alright, so from everything I can figure out online, I can get rid of this. I do not need it, in my opinion. And it's not even working anyway. And then this was just a throttle position sensor, which clearly wasn't hooked up at all. I could probably just leave it on here, or maybe I can clean that off. Choke. I don't know if it worked or not. I doubt it did. But we may have to do something with that to make it work better. Oh boy. Well, let me get the light. There's probably part of the reason it wasn't running very good. I don't know if you can see all that gunk down in there. Looks like dead leaves. Alright. I don't know how to take, like, say, the accelerator pump or whatever apart on this thing. so I'm probably not going to mess with it. I got the majority of all that crud out of here. That's got to help it. I mean, I sprayed cleaner through all the ports. Alright, there's that cable that runs in there to a little pull knob I'm going to use for my manual choke now. So we're going to slap the carburetor on here and get this thing hooked back up. Upon looking, there's supposed to be a rod that goes from this that runs down to this thing, so that whenever this choke is on, it lets this shove it up to put it onto a higher idle, like that, and then as it warms up, it drops it to let the idle drop. And that rod's completely missing, so I would have to make something that goes from here down to there. There's a little thermostat thing in there, that little coil. There we go. I think we can hook our cable onto that. That'll let us work it a lot better. So I was trying to figure out what I was going to make my rod out of. I had this old fuel pump sending unit sitting here from the old Ford Ranger. I think this here will work just fine. So the reason I think this will work perfect is because it's got one of these washer things that clamp onto this rod. So I've got that's this size. The other end just needs to have a hook in it. So I think this is going to work real good. So there's my rod. And you just hook it in here like this. And then this swings down and under. Alright, I got that in there, and everything fits good. So how this is going to work, when you yank your choke cable here, this is going to push down on this, but you got to push the throttle pedal in the truck before you pull the choke cable, so that it'll set it up on the high idle. That sets the choke and everything, and whenever you you can release the choke, it'll still stay on high idle until you hit the gas, and it should pull itself down. So that's how the rat rod works too. It's got a manual choke. It's a 350 Chevy, and you got to push the throttle pedal down, yank the choke cable out, and it sets the choke. And when you hit the gas, it'll release it. Yeah, I don't know if you guys can see where that shaft comes off, now it bends up. So my plan is, I probably made that hole too small, didn't I? There we go. Okay. Now, all I gotta do is attach this cable down here to something. So whenever I yank on it, as long as it's gonna pull it that far, so that's closed. Alright. Had to go in the cab, see if that cable's pulled. Hopefully it's going to pull far enough. If not, I'm going to have to figure that out. Alright, I got it hooked up. I'm going to go inside and pull the cable and release it. It's pulled right now. I'm going to release it, and the choke should work pretty good right there. There's choke off, choke on. Choke off, choke on. That there ought to work pretty good. So, well, we converted this old truck to a manual choke now. Let's throw the battery back in her and see how she starts, and she'll act a little better now, running. Well, that don't sound too bad. it worked for me. That's pretty good. Way better than what it ever was. Well, hey, there's the carburetor part of this. That's better than this thing's ever ran for a long time. So we're going to move on to the rest of the truck. Next up, we're going to do the fuel tanks. If you look at them, you can see they're the same tanks, other than this here's the one that was in the truck that's got a hole in it. It's got a small sending unit. This here's the larger one for fuel injected. But I was noticing that the smaller one actually fits right in here. So this is going to be an even easier job than what I expected, because I'm just going to plug these off. And we're going to cut this little square out here and cut a hole here and stick it on here and weld it around there. And it's going to be done. And we slap her back up underneath the truck. So I was going to go ahead and try to take this ring off and get the sending unit out of here. But I know with my luck this ring is going to break. So I'm just going to cut around it with the grinder. We'll just take this whole piece. Over here we'll cut a smaller hole. Like I said, I mean, you're talking it's going to sit on top of it that much. Good enough for me. Again, as I've stated, these tanks have been sitting in the bed of this truck for the last 6 months. I stuck my nose, there's no hint of gas or anything like that. And I'm pretty sure this one especially was dry long before that, because it's got holes rusted in the bottom of it. And there's what we needed. That's just a nice, simple sending unit. It's just a pickup and a fuel gauge. I'm afraid I might have to figure out something to do. I might have to pull this one off and cut the stuff off the bottom of it, because I can see something in here. I don't know, it might just be a baffle down in there. Here's the inside of this old fuel tank. See all the rust? She had water in her for a good while, it looks like. So let's get the sending unit out of here. Yeah. There's still a hint of some nasty old, it's like gel. So I don't think anything in there is flammable, because I took the fuel pump and screen off this and I threw it in the wood stove just to see if it would, catch on fire instantly and burn, and it didn't. It just sat in there for a minute. And then the plastic finally started burning, and I yanked it back out real quick. So I think I'm pretty safe. All right, what do you guys think? About right in there somewhere? Well, I got her all hosed out nice and good, and I'm going to dry the water out in here, and then we're going to start welding. I don't think she gets much better than that right there, other than buying a new tank. She's, right there's the pickup right in the low spot where it's supposed to be. I still haven't dried this thing out yet. This tank ain't in terrible shape. A lot of that's just varnish. That's not rust. As much as it looks like rust, that's actually varnish. So I stuck some rags in there and soaked up all the water I possibly could, and it was just damp in the tank still, so I threw it on top of the wood stove. I'm gonna let her sit here and steam out. All right, I got her cleaned up there and put in the spot. I'm just gonna start tack welding around here. I'll probably have to tack and move the clamp and do all 4 corners, and then I can go at it. Well, she's welded up. There's a few spots that don't look too pretty, but for the most part, it's done. Well, there's my solution to that old sending unit. That ought to work just fine. Alright, so I used some West Virginia chrome to plug off my filler neck hole there. And just got the air thing on here. It doesn't take much. I see one hole so far. I got 4 holes total. 1, 2, 3, and 4. That one right there is significant. Yep, they're gained one. They're gained another one. This ain't good. I got bubbles everywhere. That tank had some pressure on it though. The duct tape did good. There's still air blowing out of it. Alright, back to the welding. And there we go, like that. This gas tank's ready to go back underneath the truck. Alright, next up on this old girl, I'm going to go ahead and yank this bed liner out of here so I can see what bed bolts are in it. Because I'm probably just going to pull the bed off to do the gas tank and deal with the leaf spring at the same time. And make it nice and easy so I'm not under there. Well, I got that bed liner out of there. Got her all swept out. This bed's really, really solid. I mean, I know it's not 1980 like the cab is. This is probably an early 90s, I would say. This side's pretty decent. The other side got a couple whiskey dents in it, but I mean, aside from that, that bed is solid as could be. Well, I think I made a decision. I'm going to get under there with a torch and just torch those bolts off. Well, I got these back 4 bolts completely out. The front 2 I can't get up out because they are seized into those body mount pucks. I will just pick the bed up with them in there and I can knock them out later where it's easier. I mean, just doing a quick look around, everything looks to be okay. Spring hangers ain't all wore out and got holes in them, and I got to do something with this cross member here. I don't know what. Oh, this cross member right here, I'm gonna have to replace that. I can see the frame leaning in here because of it. If you look at that front spring hanger, you can see how it's angled this way. Yeah. Yeah, I'll address that. That's no big deal. That's just a piece of 6-inch C-channel solves that whole issue. Well, I guess first thing I'm going to get moving doing, I'm going to go ahead and grind these rivets off of this old cross member here. Get it out of there. Got the old cross member out of there. Probably going to address this exhaust while I'm in here too. You know, considering it's rubbing on the drive shaft, and that's pretty much where it's welded at too. I'm just going to lob it off there, and I'll worry about welding it back up in here later. Might put a bend in it or something and get it up to that cross member once I get it back on here. So I'm just going to cut that off with the Sawzall. So I'm still in the teardown process here. I'm going to go around and I'm going to try to get all the brake line fittings broke loose. This one here, I'm just going to have to get a new one, clearly. But I'm going to try to get them all out and get them out of stuff. Might have to take a torch, might have to use vice grips, I don't know. But I'm going to work on getting those out. Well, that was actually way less painful than what I expected it to be. They all came out relatively easy. Just put some vice grips on them, squeezed them, and twisted them out of there. Well, we're moving on next. We're going to try for this leaf spring, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with it. Alright, I heated them up, soaked them down with penetrating oil. You can still see them smoking a little bit. We're going to hit them with the impact. Well, I got her off there. I had to take a punch and drive that center bolt down through the top spring. But there they are. They're all free, ready to come out of there. So I'm going to get the frame jacked up a little bit better and get some stands under it, get it stabilized. And then I'll start messing with this. Well, there's those leaf springs down out of there. There's the broken one you can see. I'm guessing the whole reason this thing broke is because this was not the right leaf spring to begin with. Somebody had cut that off to shorten it to put it in there to make one. So I'm pretty sure I've got a good one in one of those sets there. And I'll slap that back in here and get us a center bolt and back together. We're going to go. Alright, it's another day in the shop. I gathered up all the parts I need and we're going to start putting this thing back together. First thing we're going to do is put our new center pin in the rest of our leaf springs and get that buckled up. Come on. Alright. And there we go. Got that started. Alright, so I got that tightened up as far as I can right now. I got to cut it off with the grinder and then tighten it on down. You can see how it's not tight just yet. Alright, next what we got to do is put this back in here and then get the leaf pack lined up on it when we drop it down on top of that. Because that's going to sit in there and hold that there. There we go. That leaf spring's all reassembled. Nice and neat. And we used recycled old parts. So we don't have anything in this other than time and a center bolt. I did have to buy a center bolt. So I went ahead and got all new fittings for the rear of this and everything. The only one I didn't get new was the one that goes up front because it's still in pretty good shape. I'm going to go ahead and run my lines and get them all done. I'm not going to bore you guys with watching me flare brake lines and all that stuff. So I'll get that done and I'll show you what I got. And there we go. We got our nice new brake lines. All ran, one to each wheel and one from right here all the way up to where it connects to the little divider thing. I may have wasted my time kind of, but I'm hoping. So I've got to make sure that I can get these bleeders loose on both these back wheels. And hopefully I don't have to replace wheel cylinders. I should be able to do it. So I'm going to try to break those loose. So this video is all about being budget friendly. I got that bleeder out of there, but you can see the mud daubers packed are clear full. So I'm just going to take the torch tip cleaners and get all the crud out of this. So this way whenever I crack it, the fluid can flow through it. Well, I got both those bleeders broke loose and made sure that they're going to spin in and out. So now let's go up here, and I've never had the lid off this master cylinder. So let's Oh boy. There it went. And we're going to fill her up. So we're just going to top her off here. And then we'll go to the back and crack the bleeders open. And just let her try to gravity bleed through here for a while. See if we get any success out of that. So I cracked this to let it gravity bleed back there and nothing was happening. So I come up here and I pulled the line off and nothing's even coming out up here. I don't know if this master cylinder is either shot or maybe it needs like bench type bled, and I might have to pump it here and see if I can get something to happen. I don't know. I'm gonna work on it for a minute and see what I can figure out here. Well, I still couldn't get nothing to come out of there, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull this master cylinder off. So I got the master cylinder off there and over here to the vise and sat in there, and there's literally nothing in there and it's not even running out. I'm gonna take something and push in here, see if we can't get something to come out of it, maybe. Ooh, there it went. At least out of one of them. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I would think that something should come out of there, at least. Well, I ended up having to order a master cylinder, so while I'm waiting on that to come, we're going to go ahead and dress up this exhaust. As far as this exhaust goes, first thing I got to do is cut this where they just butt welded this together off. And if I can't find a collar, I'll probably butt weld it back on there, but it's going to be at least all the way around and straight. So I'm going to cut that off flush. Well, I went ahead and cut that off, and it looks to me like whoever welded this, more than likely they used a flux core wire welder, because these welds are just absolutely hideous. And they weren't even in there, they were just kind of tacked on most spots. The best place that it was on there was where it burnt through, and then they piled it up to hold it. So we'll get her cleaned up though. So I went out in the building and I found this piece of exhaust pipe, and I went ahead and cut it off, cut the neck off of it, and fitted it up on here. And this end here fits the tailpipe up there real good. So I'm going to weld this around here, and then I can weld this to the truck, and we'll have the exhaust fixed. Well, that there didn't turn out too bad at all. It turned out pretty good, I think. Alright, I'm going to get fitted up here to the truck. So, just looking at this, I think I'm going to put this exhaust in here, standing up and down, like so. Because I think it just, it fits a little better in there. It's still down below the frame rails, so I'll be able to put my cross member in. And because this truck's got that body lift, there's no way in heck it'll hit anything up here. It gives me more room between my drive shaft and the frame over there, and actually raises it up. It gets it from being down low. So I think that's how I'm going to mount it. I realize that exhaust is pointed like kind of straight back, and that doesn't hurt anything. It's not blowing on the shock, and it's missing the differential. So I'm going to call that one there a win, and that's worth getting welded. Well, I think that there turned out pretty good. She's on there pretty solid. So, and she's actually straight, and doesn't have any holes in it either. So there's the exhaust handled. So as for making my cross member, I went outside and dug in the scrap pile, and I found this here. This is 2x4 square tubing. So it's a little overkill, but I had it laying around. I didn't buy anything, and this will work great. And I've got some 2x2 angle iron. So I will cut a couple pieces of this off, weld it onto the ends here, and drill my holes right here for my cross member. And that ought to do the trick. So I'll show you what that looks like. So it's kind of hard to tell on video, but if you look right there above the exhaust, you can see my two pieces angle. So if you look up to the next cross member, if you measure between the two frame rails up there, it's 33 inches. Well, that's what the frame is supposed to be back here as well, and it's only 32.5. So there's a ½ inch difference. If you look down the side of the rail, you can actually see where it leans in right in there, where those springs are. That got me what I was after. She's all welded up. That looks pretty good to me. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'll get her bolted on the truck. And there we have it. Cross members bolted in there. Everything's nice and solid and clean. Looks pretty good. And if you look down through here, those frame rails are straight now. So I took care of that issue. Looks pretty good up through there. Next up, I'm going to be putting a gas tank in this. I went ahead and I sprayed some penetrating oil into this fuel line. And I took the air hose and blew air through it and made sure it blew everything out of that line. So this way, whenever I do hook it back up, I know that I got a good clean line. Okay, so upon looking at this, I was going to flip this cross member over to make it go lower to meet that gas tank so it sat level. But I can't do that, one, because it hits my exhaust, and two, whenever I do that, then I have to spread the frame a ½ inch wider to clear for these angles, a 1/4 inch on each side. And then that's putting too much outward pressure on the frame. So what I've decided to do is I'm probably just going to drill a couple holes and add like a 2x4 here and countersink the bolts, and that'll give me a spacer, and that'll give something softer than steel for the tank to ride up against. So it should work pretty good. So I got my spacer mounted under there. Yeah, it's just a piece of 2x4. It'll work just fine. It's an old truck. I ain't worried about it. Alright, so this nice ratchet strap is what's going to be my gas tank strap. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. So anyhow, I had a piece of old belting outside the door that I used to lay down on the floor to run the dozer in here. So I cut a piece of that off and bolted a couple pieces of angle iron on each end. And this is simply going to wrap around here like so, and it will bolt up here to this cross member. And whenever I tighten it down on that cross member, it'll pull tight on the bottom of the tank, and that's going to be my gas tank strap. There we go. She's all plumbed up and everything. All the hoses and fuel tank or fuel gauge wire and everything's hooked up. So let me know in the comments, if you guys were doing a budget-friendly build and fixing things, how would you have made a gas tank strap without buying them? Would you have done something like this? Or, I mean, would you have went like the other people did with the exhaust and tie wired it up there? I'm just curious. Let me know what you think. It's a new day in the shop, and looky here, the mail came, and we got our Dorman master cylinder, and we got a bench bleeder kit for it. And I ordered this stuff off of Amazon, reason being part stores wanted $60 just for the master cylinder. This was $24 on Amazon, and that was like $9, so total it was $33, and they shipped it to the house. So way to go, Amazon. Well, we got an issue with this. I don't think it's a big issue, but these master cylinders here, the one that was on it, the lines came out this side, and the one I got, the lines come out this side. I've looked everything over, and they're identical other than the fact that they drilled ports and put ports on this side of it. So I'm not real sure what the differences are, but this one's going to work for me. I'm going to make it work. So another thing that I noticed was on this one here, this back line fitting was bigger around. So I've just got to I got to reflare my line and put a smaller fitting to fit this 3/8 fitting on this. And aside from that, everything is the same. So this is the one I'm putting on. I'll go ahead and bench bleed this master cylinder here. Alright, I got her all bench bled out here. I'm going to go ahead and bolt her on the truck. So, I went ahead and got that master cylinder bolted up there, and I got my brake lines bent around here where they need to go. I'm going to pull these plugs out and go ahead and put the brake lines in here. I got to make sure that this doesn't run empty. And once I get that all hooked up, we're going to try gravity bleeding again. Alright, she's all hooked up, filled up. We're going to go to the back, crack the bleeders loose, and see if any fluid will slowly make its way down through these lines. Very slowly but surely, the fluid is dropping in this since I've cracked that bleeder, because I topped it off to where it was almost running into the second one. And it's very slowly going down. So, we will probably get somewhere with this. It's just going to take a little bit. And back here at our bleeder, if you look, we've got fluid running out of it now. And there's some little air bubbles. So I'm going to keep it topped off and make sure that everything gets out here. And this is the passenger rear. Next we'll do that one. And then we've got to do the front ones again, of course, because we had the master cylinder off. But I'm probably going to have to pull the tires for that. So, well, the back ones are all gravity bled out. I'm going to jack the front of this thing up, probably yank these tires off so I can get to those bleeders. And once I get them gravity bled, I'm going to try to get my daughter to come up here and pump the brake pedal so I can crack the bleeders loose and actually get them bled out good. So, as I kind of figured, in here on these front bleeders, right there it is, you can't get a socket on it, and I guarantee you by the time you put a wrench on here, I don't have any 6-point wrenches. All mine are 12 points. You put a 12-point wrench on this even, and you're going to round this thing off. It is, it's rusted in there pretty good. So, vice grips it is. So, I managed to get those front bleeders loose. This one here was actually easy. Once I crimped the vice grips on it, it cracked pretty easy. The passenger one, I've about got the bleeder pretty rounded off, but it did come loose, and I had fluid coming out of it. So I'm going to check the rest of my lines, make sure they're all good and tight, because I did have a little bit of fluid dripping off of one of the ones on the master cylinder. Tightened it up a little bit more, good to go. I'm going to check the ones down there on that divider block, right down in there, and just make sure everything's good and tight. In my OSHA 10 training class, I learned that this is a no-no, but only when you're at work, that's when it applies. Well, there we go. The brakes are all bled out. My daughter came up, she pumped the pedal up for me, and I cracked all the bleeders loose. We got all of them bled out good. So, moving on. Yeah, it's a new day in the shop, and if you look at this bumper, you can see that it's bent up like this. So I'm going to soak all these bolts down with some penetrating oil here and see if I can't break them loose and get this bumper to where we can adjust it some, tweak it back. Well, actually I loosened that one up. She dropped down level. I just don't know how it's going to be on the height on the bed. So I might take the ones underneath loose too. I might leave them. I don't know. I'll think about it here. We'll see what happens. So I loosened up some bolts and yanked and beat around here enough. I got that bumper sitting pretty good and level. I think I'm going to put her back tight right there the way she is and just go with it. If it's gapped out a little bit here, I don't care. Well, there's the bumper part done. I've got a few other little things that I got to do on here. I'm going to spare you guys watching, like changing the oil and just some stuff like that. I'm going to go ahead and get all that done, and whenever I get ready to put the bed back on, that's what you're going to see. So, how do you guys recycle your oil filters? I know what I do is I walk over here to the wood stove and I chuck them in there and let them burn because that old oil gives me heat. And after they burn out, I throw them in the scrap bucket and I haul them to the junkyard. How you guys recycle your oil filters? Let me know in the comments. Alright, I got some things finished up. I changed the oil. I got the filler neck on here. And I filled the rear end up with gear oil. It was pretty low. Well, the time has finally come. I'm going to pull the truck out of the garage and I'm going to set that bed on there. This here's what's bad about trying to do stuff yourself. I had that corner lined up. The tractor doesn't pivot, so I can't twist it around there. If I had somebody standing there, they could have shoved it over, and the bed would have been right where it needed to be. So, now I've got to do it manually myself. Oh! Alright, there we go. Good enough. I can get it in the garage, and I'll get a jack under it so I can put them body mount pucks and stuff back up under it and put her back together. So as you can see, my body lines are off and stuff. And that's because I still got to put these pucks right here in for the body lift. And I've got to get my filler neck fished up into there and get it secured. So that's what I'm going to do. So how I'm doing this, I already did the other side. I got my bolts. I stick my bolt down in the hole. I get under there with a jack and a board, and I jack it up. And I stick my finger up in there, move the bolt, and I shove my body puck in. And then I drop the bolt and it comes down into the body puck. I get underneath and I make sure that the hole's all lined up, and then I get up top and I tap it down through with the hand. I'll try to reenact all that in real life. And like that, I got the bolt in it. I still gotta shove it around a little bit, get it lined up. And I'm gonna put my filler neck up in there. Well, hey, there we go. The bed's all bolted down, filler neck's done. She starts, runs, off its own gas tank. She's mint. I mean, it's no Ford. What more do you want? So, I ain't sure if the lights work or not. It's dark outside. Let's go take it for a test drive. Well, that's always a good sign. Can't beat that. Well, let's see if the lights work here. I can see something out there. Let's try to go down the road here for a minute. Oh yeah, we got one headlight. Let's see here. Where's that switch on the floor at? There it is. Yeah, that's even worse. We got one headlight. Well, I went out the road and back, and this thing ran pretty dang good for what it is. And I brought her back in the garage, and she's just sitting here purring like a kitten. I could never do that before in this truck. It would just always load up and shut off. So that's pretty good right there. So real quick, I'll go over everything that I put on this truck new. The reason that I'm calling this budget friendly. The only new stuff that I've had to add was a fuel pump, an oil filter, oil, master cylinder, a roll of brake line, and some brake line fittings. and then 1 center bolt for the leaf spring in the rear. Everything else was free or salvaged. So, pretty budget friendly if you ask me. Well, there you guys have it. I've still got a few little odds and end things to tie up on this, like working on some lights here and there, and I'll probably take the battery out of the Geo, put it in here and get a new one for the Geo, just so it's got a battery, and well, this thing's ready to go down the road. I'm going to throw it up on the marketplace, and it can make somebody a good mud truck, or if there's some kid out there that wants to buy it for a project for his first truck and fix it up, I think it'll make a good one for him. So if you guys like videos like this, go check out the rest of my channel. Thanks for watching.